What you're about to hear will horrify anyone still following the situation. This time, Donald Trump not only attacked his enemies, but also humiliated his own allies in broad daylight. And what Mike Johnson does next is even worse. Stay tuned, because this moment will reveal everything. We are anonymous. We are a decentralized collective. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We do not bend to power, to propaganda, or to those who demand loyalty, while offering none in return. And today, we expose a pattern that has become impossible to ignore. A pattern of humiliation, submission, and blind devotion. This is the story of how Donald Trump throws his own allies under the bus, and then backs over them again, just to make sure they stay there. Because what you are about to hear is not an isolated moment. It is not a misunderstanding. It is not just politics. It is who he is. And this is just another day. Republicans in Congress had only been back in session for a few short days, and already they found themselves scrambling, not to solve the crises facing Americans, not to address the economic pain felt by millions, not to bring stability in a time of global tension, but to defend Donald Trump. Again. Always again. This time, the controversy centered on something that should have been unthinkable. The President of the United States, or rather, the man who still dominates the Republican Party, launched a direct attack on the Pope. Yes, the Pope. Donald Trump lashed out at Pope Leo, the first American Pope, telling him to get his act together, accusing him of lacking common sense and claiming he was catering to the radical left.
And Trump lashing out at Pope Leo, of course, the first American Pope.
Leo should get his act together as Pope, use common sense, stop catering to the radical left.
I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
He didn't just disagree. He didn't just respond. He dragged him, publicly, aggressively, and without restraint. And why? Because the Pope dared to speak about peace. Because he suggested that the world needed coexistence instead of conflict. Because he questioned war. That was enough. And immediately Trump's allies rushed in to clean up the damage, like they always do, like they always will. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, stepped forward carefully, nervously, trying to walk the tightrope between defending Trump and not completely alienating millions of Christians. Listen, he said.
I was taken a little bit aback, just honestly, frankly, by something that was said. I think he said several days back that something about those who engage in war, that Jesus doesn't hear their prayers or something. It is a very well settled matter of Christian theology. There's something called the just war doctrine. There's a time to every purpose under heaven.
I'm not one to criticize clerics and religious leaders. We defend free speech, the free exercise of religion. A pontiff can say anything they want. But if you weigh into political waters, you should expect some political response. A political response. That's what he called it. Not an attack, not disrespect, not an outrageous public confrontation with one of the most significant religious figures on earth. Just a response. And someone immediately pushes back. You think the Pope received just some of that? This wasn't measured. This wasn't respectful. This wasn't even strategic. It was Trump doing what Trump always does, lashing out, escalating, dominating the narrative, and leaving everyone else to deal with the fallout. And Mike Johnson, he kept going. He admitted he was taken aback by something the Pope said, something about those who engage in war, that Jesus may not hear their prayers. He tried to frame it as a theological issue. He brought up just war doctrine. He tried to intellectualize it. Think about how absurd that is. A politician trying to lecture the Pope on Christian theology. This is the moment where reality begins to fracture, where logic stops applying, where loyalty replaces truth. Because this isn't just any politician dabbling in religion. This is a man so publicly devout, so committed to projecting moral authority, that even his personal habits have become part of his political identity. And yet here he is, bending, twisting, rationalizing, all to defend someone who shows no such restraint. And he's not alone. Another Republican is asked directly, are you on the Pope's side or the President's side? And what do we get? Deflection. I'm quite confident both the Pope and the President can speak for themselves. Translation.
Got a question for you. Are you on the Pope's side or the President's side? You know what? I'm quite confident both the Pope and the President can speak for themselves.
I'm not answering that question, because answering honestly would reveal everything. Then J.D. Vance steps in, attempting to elevate the argument. Or perhaps just disguise it. He says the Pope should be careful when speaking on theology. Careful. That theology should be anchored in truth. That clergy should be held to a standard.
I think that it's important, in the same way that it's important for the Vice President of the United States to be careful when I talk about matters of public policy. I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology. I think one of the issues here is that if you're going to opine on matters of theology, you've got to be careful. You've got to make sure it's anchored in the truth. And that's one of the things that I try to do. And it's certainly something I would expect from the clergy, whether they're Catholic or Protestant.
Listen to that again. A politician telling the Pope to be careful about theology. This is not confidence. This is not conviction. This is submission disguised as authority. And it reveals something deeper, something darker about the current state of power. Because these men are not defending faith. They are defending Trump. And the cost of that defense is their own credibility, their own dignity, their own integrity. But the story doesn't end there. It never does with Trump. Because while they are busy defending his attack on the Pope, another controversy erupts. A doctored image appears, one that many immediately recognize as deeply inappropriate, even blasphemous. Trump, once again, has crossed a line. And once again, the reaction is predictable. Outrage, not from the left, but from within his own base. Christian leaders, evangelicals, people who would normally stand by him. They call it inappropriate. They call it offensive. One even says, God shall not be mocked.
Now, even members of the Christian right who typically support the president were offended, calling it, quote, inappropriate and blasphemous. One of the president's closest supporters said, quote, God shall not be mocked. But it's clear the president heard the message because he took that picture down without apology.
And what does Mike Johnson do? He runs to Trump. He says he spoke with him. He says Trump didn't mean it that way. He says it wasn't intended to be sacrilegious.
I talked with the president about it as soon as I saw it, and told him that I don't think it was being received in the same way he intended it. He agreed and he pulled it down. That was the right thing to do. He explained how he saw that, and I don't think he thought it was sacrilegious at all.
He reassures the public. He reassures the base. He reassures everyone. Except the one person who actually needs to show accountability. Because Trump doesn't apologize. He deletes the post. That's it. And in Trump's world, that's considered growth. That's considered reflection. That's considered enough. But it isn't. Because almost immediately, another image appears. This time, it's Trump being embraced by Jesus. Not satire, not irony. Posted, shared, amplified. Because he didn't learn anything. He never does, and yet his defenders continue. They say he's joking. They say he's misunderstood. They say he has a colorful way of expressing himself, like a toddler with finger paint. Except this toddler controls a movement, a party, a narrative, and the consequences are real. So the question becomes unavoidable. Why? Why do they keep doing this? Why do they keep humiliating themselves for someone who will never return the favor? Why do they keep defending the indefensible? The answer is simple. Power. But even that explanation is starting to crack, because the numbers don't lie. Poll after poll shows declining support. A net approval rating on taxes sitting at minus 28 points, down 30 points from his previous term. Americans increasingly worried about war, about the economy, about the direction of the country. Nearly 2/3 of Americans feel negative about the economy. Support for military action is dropping fast.
This, he's at minus 28 points as net approval rating on taxes, down 30 points from term number one.
New CBS News polling finds many Americans, maybe quite understandably, worried about the Iran war and skeptical of the United States under President Trump meeting its stated goals.
Nearly 2/3 of Americans are feeling negative about the U.S. economy.
We've seen a 10-point drop. A 10-point drop in about a month's time when it comes to how popular this war is. It has become even less popular, and it wasn't popular to start off with.
This isn't strength. This isn't momentum. This is erosion. And still, Trump pushes forward. While Americans struggle to afford basic necessities, gas, groceries, healthcare, what is he focused on? A 250-foot triumphal arch in Washington, D.C., an architectural monument, a spectacle, a symbol, not of unity, not of recovery, but of ego. The height, 250 feet, to match 250 years of American history.
As you know, this year we celebrate America's 250th birthday. In honor of this historic occasion, President Trump and the Department of Interior will submit plans for the United States Triumphal Arch, which will be an architectural masterpiece to celebrate our history right here in Washington, D.C. This is a rendering of the arch for you. Thank you, Peter. It's quite beautiful, as you can see, and this monumental arch will beam at 250 feet tall in honor of 250 years.
A perfect metaphor. The scale of the monument, matching the scale of the waste. And that's not the only 250 in this story. A $250 million offer from a mega donor tied to constitutional ambitions. A $250 million cut to Medicaid affecting real people, real families. $250 billion gained by billionaires during his first year. Numbers that don't just represent policy, they represent priorities, and those priorities are clear. Not the people, never the people, and yet the defenders remain. They speak of faith, of values, of morality. But when tested, when confronted with actions that directly contradict those values, they choose Trump. Every time. They condemn a pope for preaching peace and defend a leader who mocks it. They claim to stand for truth and excuse lies. They claim to stand for faith and tolerate blasphemy, because in the end, their loyalty is not to principles, it is to power. And Trump knows it. That's why he keeps pushing. That's why he keeps escalating. That's why he throws them under the bus, over and over again. Because he knows they will stay. He knows they will defend him. He knows they will get up, brush themselves off, and come back for more. And that is the real story. Not just Trump's behavior, but the willingness of others to enable it, to excuse it, to normalize it. So let's say it clearly. Trump didn't just embarrass Mike Johnson, he exposed him. He revealed the limits of his independence, the depth of his loyalty, and the cost of his allegiance. He threw him under the bus, and then he backed over him again. And unless something changes, it will happen again, and again, and again. We are anonymous. You've seen the pattern, you've heard the truth. Now the question is, what will you do with it? If you believe in accountability, in integrity, in leaders who serve people instead of themselves, then don't look away. Don't stay silent. Share this message. Speak out. Because the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to stop. We are anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.